All right, welcome back to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. As always, I'm your host, Adam Smith, with Just the Tips Coaching. And with me, pretty much as always, is our marketing director, one of our other coaches, all around superhuman, social media day MC and host, Jen Waybor Hart. Hey, Jen, are you with us? Well,
I'm here.
what did we just see zip behind you?
Rosanna.
Rosanna, one of our social media day attendees. I'm not going to lie. I'm glad we're through that conference. That was a ton of work for, I don't know how
Yeah.
many years social media day has been going on, but man, that was a ton of work for that event. But you went all out. We had a killer event. Thank you for
Thank you.
doing that. And all of those people that missed it, man, they really fucking missed out. There was
It was a
that
great
was a
day.
pretty impressive amount of content. Yeah. It wasn't voluminous content, but it was really cool content.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was a great day.
So on with the show, because we have a really cool guest today. And I've been looking forward to this for some time, not just for the opportunity to give him a lot of shit, which I'm sure we'll do over the next 30 minutes, but this is kind of a unique character. We don't have a ton of mortgage people on the show. We don't have a ton of people that are outside of that circle we run in, Fight Club that we run in. So this is really cool. So welcome to the show, Steven Flores. How are you, man?
All right, thank you. I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Yeah,
You guys are out here living?
Yeah, we're doing all right. Just chaos. I have definitely decided that the worst hood I ever lived in was adulthood.
That's definitely true.
It's yeah. I don't know why we thought doing that would be a good idea, but dumb. Just dumb. All right, so I'm going to give our audience a little bit of background on Steven, and then we'll get a little bit more background on Steven from Steven. But Steven, you're a mortgage originator in California, mostly the Fresno area, although I understand you're coming to us live from San Diego after driving down there to see a concert last night, which is really cool. You've always been kind of a mobile guy. Every time we talk to you, hey, I'm in Vegas, or I'm in LA, or I'm in Mexico, or whatever the case may be.
I'm doing something.
But I think there are a couple of things that are really important that I want to talk about today. One is that you are one of our prodigies. You went through the entire JTT coaching program. And I think the other thing that's really important, because a lot of people in our audience, a lot of mortgage people in our audience, especially, although real estate agents and the car sales guys and even insurance agents on and on as well, you made a recent company change.
I did.
After a long stretch with the previous one.
I did.
That's a really big deal, and something that a lot of people, are nervous about, or worried about, or scared of doing, or afraid to take that leap to get out of their comfort zone, whatever the case may be. So I do want you to give us the highlights and lowlights of that as well, but give us a little background about you. There are obviously some things that I know and could talk to our audience about, like your former Troy Polamalu head of hair. That one, Jen and I always thought was really, because when we met you, you were bald.
Yes.
So for us to kind of like, no, you didn't have hair like Troy. And when we saw the photos, of course, we flipped out.
Right.
And I know before you did mortgages, you were in the car game. Pretty common switch. I know a lot of people from, yesterdecade had made that change and even have gone back and forth over their careers. But give us a little background. How long have you been doing mortgages?
So now I'm coming up on my 4th year full-time doing mortgages.
Okay.
I love it. It's been an interesting ride. I'll tell everybody that. I got into
the last
it
4 years have been an interesting ride. Yeah.
I got into it when COVID was at its peak, and we've seen the lowest rates in any industry, I guess you could say.
Yep.
I even wrote some people in the 1.7 interest rates and stuff like that, to like the highest I've ever seen ever. And not only that, like the quickest climb as well. So it was definitely an adjusting period there. The biggest change that I've seen in mortgages in any industry. Because I came from the car industry and I saw interest rates change, and I've seen the whole 9 yards. And so, granted, in the car sales, it goes month by month, and you don't, it's not like mortgages from one day to the next. You could see like a big difference in essentially when it comes to clients and such. And so that has been a ride. I tell that to everybody. Some adjusting, and I'm grateful to have a great coach, great mentor to show me how to get business, how to keep business, and stay active in the industry, I guess you could say.
You run this shit like a seasoned pro. I guess I knew that it had only been 4 years or so, but you literally run mortgage origination like you've been doing it 20 years. And some of that is probably just because of those violent opposite ends of the spectrum from what we saw in 2020 and then what we saw in 21, 22, 23. I mean, it's just been a full circle. So you kind of have run the whole gamut of how insane the mortgage business is. But even then, you were running it like a seasoned veteran. You really have a solid grip on a lot of the things even before we worked on them when it came to lead generation and team structure and these kinds of things. But yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. I mean, Jen, I assume you view it the same way. He said 4 years. I was like, really? That's it?
I can't believe it's been 4 years since we met Steven in Vegas. That just seems bizarre.
Is that right? Is that this summer?
Yeah.
Yeah, August.
Oh, yeah. You were a brand new LO at the time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, good on you, man. Boy, you've come a long, long way. Holy cow. So, okay, there are a few things that I think a lot of our audience is going to want to know about when it comes to this transition. That was basically in the last few months that you changed companies.
Actually, month. Yeah,
last
month and a half.
Okay, I guess we started talking about you making that change earlier than that. And I don't know a whole lot about your current company. Obviously, I knew a ton about your former company. I'd been to the office a couple of times there in Fresno, had met the owner, had met a lot of the other LOs, some of the real estate agents. I think that's probably an important thing to discuss as a pretty big difference, is that your previous company had both real estate and mortgages.
Correct.
So there were TCs, there were LOAs, there were processors, all kinds of different hats being worn in the support staff space.
Correct.
And then obviously in the sales space, both real estate agents and loan originators. And on top of all that, you were actually acting as a sales manager, as well as trying to do your own production and do some of the processing and kind of doing some of the pre-underwriting and all of these sorts of things. But it was, in fact, the mortgage side of it was, in fact, a wholesale brokerage. You guys were true mortgage brokers.
Correct.
Okay. So now that we've got that baseline, I guess, of sorts established, tell us about your new company. Same thing? Are you guys brokers?
So the new company, it's more of a true correspondent. So they sell directly to Fannie and Freddie. If us in the mortgage industry would know. So with that being said, it's more of a retail shop than it is a broker channel. Now, don't get me wrong, they still give me the opportunity to broker out, and I can really send a file to whoever, Rocket, UWM, or whoever the case is, if we need to.
No, are we going to get into that debate?
Yeah,
into the Rocket UWM debate? Jesus, we don't have that kind of time. Okay.
But if I needed to, I could send a file to them. The only thing is, everything, that's one of the biggest changes that I have noticed from the old brokerage to the new brokerages. The old brokerage, I was wearing so many hats because I was on the mortgage channel. I was wearing all these hats. I was doing a lot of pre-underwriting stuff, and handling a lot of the workload that came from processing as well. Even speaking to underwriters at a certain point. With this new shop, everything is so dialed in. It's I have a dedicated team of LOA and processor. It's the same people every time. It's I never speak to underwriters anymore. I stick to originating versus having to do all of the above at the previous shop. And so now it's a true originator space, I guess you could say. Now I can just solely focus on just producing, building my relationships, the important stuff, taking care of the client, making sure they understand everything, and getting everybody through the guideline in a timely manner at the end of the day. And so
Originating loans.
Yes.
Yeah,
originating loans.
that's your job. You are a loan originator.
Correct.
Okay. And I know that you always understood how valuable that was. We obviously worked on it for months through our coaching program, those kinds of things. But I'm so glad that now this is like, I see it. To work in an operation where all of the things that are subsequent, that are a byproduct of originating loans, are being done by somebody else who's probably better at it than you are anyway. Whoever's processing your loans now is probably a better processor than you.
Yes. 100%.
I know that's true in my office.
Yeah.
Whoever's better at doing the data entry, pulling credit reports, getting pay stubs, getting documents, ordering appraisals, running DU, on and on and on. The people on my team are better at it than I am as well.
Right.
And now it is for you as, in this case too, which is really cool shit. I mean, that's really a big deal for you to have been able to make that step. Was it hard to do? Were you terrified to change companies?
It did take a lot of like, I guess you could say soul searching in a sense, like, because originally my plan was to open up my own branch, my own branch off of the previous brokerage, and then more importantly to have everything set up. The only issue I kept running into was like, how is it that I get 5 to 6 escrows in a contract, and I'm struggling over here, and then I come across these guys that have like 15, 20, and they're like, oh yeah, it's easy right now. I'm like, it kept mind boggling me. I was like, what's going on here? What are they doing different than I'm not? Like, where it's like, the disconnect. And so, I started doing my research. I started diving deeper into it and, realizing, hey, look, over here, like, they don't have it figured out yet. It was a startup. And, at the end of the day, I was the one in charge trying to figure out how to get this ship built the correct way. But I started hitting these walls where, like, the changes that needed to be made and that I wanted to be made weren't really aligning with what, the company was doing at the time. And so then I thought, like, you know what? It's time to make a change. I've, been talking to these guys over here and, everything that they've shown me. And even now I've already, thankfully we've already got the first month I've had, several closings already and, everything's been smooth and, it all makes sense now. It's like everything, it's like a light bulb clicking on the top of your head. I was like, wow. I was like, this is a huge difference. Now I'm truly an originator versus, a manager, a small business owner, I guess you could say, a startup company, I have to pioneer everything.
Sales
processor,
manager.
Sales,
yeah, pre-underwriter, LOA. Yeah, you were doing a lot of jobs. So I think there are some important things that are along this that our audience would love to know about. Like, what are these disconnects that you're seeing going on at the old company that you solved by going to the new company? What were some of the walls that you were running into? And why was making a change from, people doing 5 or 6 deals a month to 10, 15, 20 deals a month? What was holding you back?
People often, like, especially when they first get into the industry, they get stuck on, like, being an underwriting guru or lowering the guidelines down to the memorizing down to the last period and everything. And I tell everybody, don't spend time doing that. There's other people that, spend time doing that. Not only that, an underwriter is always going to find something different than you because of just the way they do things. An underwriter is truly an underwriter versus an originator is just an originator and know-how type of deal. And so one of the biggest disconnects was essentially the due process of how everything gets done. And so at this new shop, when I get a client, everything for the most part is streamlined down to like the borrower certification authorization, being able to collect data from the client, from the employers, from the other third-party sources that we need to, versus transitioning over to the previous shop. I had to collect all that stuff without really have gotten the proper training. And, I had to, I guess you could say, try to learn by doing, learn by failing type of deal.
Sure.
And so,
it's funny that you mentioned that because, and Jen, maybe you saw the video, but I think all three of us know your favorite British mortgage broker, Ben Lavender in New York. I think we've all met him through different channels, conferences, those kinds of things. And I think Ben recently did a video, and Ben's been all over his fucking video. I cannot open a reel, a TikTok, a shorts without seeing Ben. But he said they're basically two types of people in the mortgage origination space. And one of them is that guideline guru, the loan originator that's actually an underwriter and knows every goddamn detail down to the dotted I's and the crossed T's when it comes to the underwriting guidelines. And the other is the killer marketer. The guy really knows how to, well, kind of, to be honest, we're doing what Ben's doing. Ben's a pretty killer marketer, no question about it. But the perfect loan originator is a hybrid of the two. Somebody who knows their guidelines, has been doing mortgages long enough to know that, nope, that's an issue that's going to hang us up. We're going to have to circumnavigate and do Freddie Mac instead of Fannie Mae, whatever. And there could be 1,000 things on that list that would steer you that way, as well as being somebody who knows how to actually originate loans.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where Steven is developing.
Right. And I've had my fair share of eggshells. I will say that compared to some people. And even when I had my team, which I didn't translate to the new shop, I was, I'm strictly going to be an originator, not like, a team captain, a manager where I build my own guys and such. But I spent my time with the new guys. I tell them, like, look, if you sit there and read guidelines and, and try to become a pro like everybody else around you, you're not going to be different than anybody else around you. Then you're going to get stuck, not, being able to find a file, client, build those relationships.
Go be an underwriter if you want to do that.
Exactly. And that's how I broke it down to them. I go, the hardest part about this job is literally getting a client to fill out the application. And the sooner you realize that, like, the easier this job gets, because the better you get at that, the more comfortable you make the client, the better the experience goes about, because then you can tell them, hey, look, I don't really have to pull your credit now, but I do have to see what you have working at the end of the day. And so I can't just take your word for it anymore. I have to kind of see it on paper. And so that is the hardest part about this job. And I tell that to everybody else. I go, but kids, even if a realtor partner gives you a client, it doesn't mean that the client's going to fill out the application. That client could just be like, hey, look, I just wanted to see what your options were, what your best rate was, and not even do anything. And so
my best rate is zero.
Exactly.
It's going to cost you $16 million to buy the rate down, but I absolutely could get you zero on your $300,000 loan. Yes, no problem. I think that there's some other pieces of this puzzle that our audience would really dig on, and you kind of touched on it. What did you bring with you when you made the change? No people, an LOA, a processor, a junior LO, nothing.
Nothing.
What did you bring with you in terms of clients? Did you take loans with you?
So there was one loan that I did leave with the shop because it was already in escrow and it was about halfway through. So I was like, I can't just pull the plug and start over, Okay. But everything else, I just basically, my clients stayed with me. They know I gave them the heads up. Hey, look, I'm making a change. It doesn't change anything for you other than I have to pull your credit again. But other than that, it's not really going to affect you. As long as you haven't opened any new accounts, we would have caught it anyways. More importantly, they understood. When I explained it to them, I was like, look, this is gonna, in the long run, this is gonna be better for you and for my, my future business, in a sense, like, I'm gonna have more time for you guys instead of like more time for you guys on the back end where you guys don't really see. And so, that was one of the biggest things that my clients I was able to pull. As far as the guys on my team, I let them know. I was like, look, I'm making this change. You don't have to come with me. You're more than welcome to. And the doors are always open for you guys. I'm going to be available for you guys regardless. I'm with you guys over there, the old shop or the new shop. But ultimately, like, I've already, expressed to these guys, my team could come in the future. At the end of the day, like, they're still figuring things out over at the broker shop. I've made it. They've seen the issues that I've dealt with. Granted, they weren't producing at the level that I was, but they were still producing and they were still dealing with the same issues I was. And so the only difference is, you don't hit those walls like I did unless they were producing to that point. And so,
Steven, this is really unique because it wasn't really a secret. You made it known very clearly what you had concerns about with the way operations went at your old shop. And when you started to give some thought to making a change, you were very transparent about it. Your team knew, hell, Jen and I knew, your clients knew, long before you ever did any of this. Long before you actually put hard wheels in motion to make the change, everybody knew. And I think that's a really big deal because I think a lot of people out there that would make a change if they knew that there was actually greener grass on the other side of the fence. And I think a lot of the things that they are worried about are things that they are kind of fabricating in their own mind and don't really have a need, not as big a need, to be worried about it as they are. And I think that that was probably true for you to some degree. I know when you and Jen and I first talked about it, I don't know, it's been a few months, I guess. I don't know. I remember Jen and I were driving back from teaching a class up in the Vale Valley, which was when we had a lot of time to sit and talk in the car. But I don't know, when was that, Jen? April? May? March?
Early May, I want to say.
I
Early
can't
April?
even remember.
I don't know. I think it was April.
It had to have been April or late March.
Okay.
Yeah, April. Early April, I'm pretty sure.
I would say that in that conversation, you had some concerns. And I think this actually worked out really well. And I think that a lot of those concerns, as it turns out, which is probably true of most of adult life anyway, were much worse in our own heads than they actually turned out to be.
Right.
Were there any hard feelings? Do you feel like the leadership at the company you left was upset about your departure?
You know, to an extent. I mean, at the end of the day, he understood where I came from, and he saw, you know, what I was pointing out, and it got to the point where, like, to this day, you know, they're making big changes over there, and you know, I got to the point where I was like, really, it took me to leave for you to realize that all of these changes needed to happen. And then they've actually lost some other players over there too that, you know, I didn't recruit anybody. They didn't come to the same shop as me, but they did leave, and you know, the major changes are happening over there because of, you know, I guess, a domino effect. And
That's
so,
good.
yeah, and so, you know,
You probably did them a service.
Right, and like at the end of the day too, you know, I wish him nothing but the best, you know, and I'm glad that he's seeing the changes that need to be made and that kind of thing. But to be said, like, you know, it does speak volumes when even like some of the producers say, I will not go work over there just because their systems are not set up here. They could pay me, you know, all of the commission in the world. It will not make sense if you can't have a space to produce efficiently. And
Right,
so I still think they're years
and it's
away.
a really important part of the process. And I know you and I would have discussed, or you and Jen, I would have discussed it privately when we were going through, probably team structure modules in the coaching program. But for all of you out there, you can put some of the greatest lead gen tools, techniques, tactics together to bring business to you, to actually be a real estate agent, to actually be a mortgage loan originator. Because again, same kind of gig there for all intents and purposes of what we're describing here. If you're a real estate agent, you do not need to know how to negotiate an inspection objection if you don't have a fucking buyer or seller. There's no need. You got to find buyers and sellers. Mortgage originators, same kind of thing. You do not need to know mortgage guidelines if you do not have borrowers. That's it. So in the effort of putting that together, finding borrowers, finding buyers and sellers, you can be top notch at that. And if you don't have good systems in place for what happens as a byproduct of that, if your customers are getting a shitty experience, then it doesn't matter. The goal here is to build a repeat and referral business. And if your customers or your clients are getting a shitty experience, they're not going to use you again, and they're not going to refer more people to you. And the goal should be to have a business that's strictly, if not predominantly, repeat clients and client referrals. So yeah, having those systems in place is of utter importance. And I understand that sales and ops kind of have to go hand in hand. They have to expand hand in hand. They have to move together hand in hand. And for those of you, you know, at the same scale, at the same pace, you can't go crazy doing all of your lead gen work, building up those techniques and tactics, only to give your clients a shitty experience. And you can't spend all your time and resources building up the operations to make sure that you have a perfect system in place, because that takes time and money. And you need borrowers, you need buyers and sellers in order to have money in order to do that. So you've got to really do these in unison. You've got to do them simultaneously. And I think that maybe where they failed, they went hardcore on some of the lead gen stuff, more agents, more originators, so on and so forth. And the lead gen stuff probably overwhelmed the systems.
Mm-hmm.
And now the systems fail. The clients don't have a good experience, and it was all for naught. Basically having to start over. How new was that company? That was the only other company you'd worked for in your career, right?
Technically, yes, because when I got licensed with a whole different company, but I never originated with them. I was just like, okay, I got licensed. Now what?
Okay. And how long had they been in business when you joined them?
I believe 13 years at that point. It's 2008.
Oh, they've been at this a long time.
Yeah, we're big. Which,
wow.
Here's the thing though, the original shop has been 3 loan officers originally, and for the longest time there was just 3 guys working out of one shop, doing the work that way, and so when it's a smaller team, smaller volume, it's easier to manage files and manage the
to
system,
keep systems in place. Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that the event I had flown out there for was a grand opening. I thought that was all fairly new.
It was a grand opening for that building and being able to basically show that the company's growing. But
okay.
I think it was more tailored towards the real estate side than it was the lending side of it at that point, because the lending side to this day even still outproduces the real estate side. So it's like not even close.
Oh,
so
okay.
So.
Well, the history demanded it. No question. No question. Well, cool. I am so glad that you made this change, that it has been so successful for you. And I really think that one of the greatest benefits of you doing this and us getting to learn about what went on is to put all kinds of mostly irrational fears to bed about making change.
Right.
About changing companies, about changing brokerages, about changing shops, these kinds of things. So for those of you that are in a direct-to-consumer sales gig for high-ticket items like mortgages and real estate, even beyond that, auto industry is certainly no unique animal in that sense. Those sort of things, I guarantee your worst fears about that are only your worst fears in your mind, and probably nowhere near as justifiable as you think they are. And Steven is obviously proof positive of that. Thanks, man. I appreciate you being really candid about all this shit on the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I'm always the open book.
And this is really cool because finally I'm learning a bunch more from you than just about tequila.
It's funny too, because I haven't had a drink in since last January.
Either I'm rubbing off or Steven's getting old, or gosh, I don't even know.
It started with just like, hey, can I go 6 months without this, in my system, and it just kept going from there. And so I haven't felt like I needed it or craved it or any of that stuff anymore. So it's more of like, why stop now?
Good on you, man. Yeah, I had a drink this year, and I think I did the math, and I had 7 last year.
Oh, yeah. See.
And there may have been a time in my life where it was 7 or north of 7 a week.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So it's definitely a big, big difference. Although this is not an AA program. For those of you listening, you want to drink. You're into hookers and blow, go for it. Whatever is your thing, by all means, shine on you crazy diamonds. But yeah, thank you. This has been a big deal, and I didn't quite plan on going down this road, so I'd like to get you back on another episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Jen, let's nail that down with Steven, because there are all kinds of things that I want to pick Steven's brain about from his time working with us in our coaching program that have evolved and developed beyond what we worked on back then. So yeah, that would be fantastic. And Jen, if you're up for it, you want to tell us what else is going on now that you're finally done with Social Media Day?
Yeah, a big thank you to everybody who came out for Social Media Day. We had a great day. A big thank you to our speakers, iPie Pizza for providing lunch for everybody. It was a great day.
Yeah, Katie
Right
Pie
now
was
we're
fantastic.
right. Um, how am I supposed to even keep talking after you said that?
Sorry.
It was we talked about everything from some really cool apps, some that I had never used before, to LinkedIn. I went over how to create 32 pieces of content from one big idea. Adam talked about video. We had Angie talking about LinkedIn. Michelle talking about Google business profiles. It was a wonderful day. So thank you to
Okay.
everybody who
Yeah,
was
Angie
involved.
making everybody get on their feet and go through the physical
Yes.
exercise of her LinkedIn exercise was super cool. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And who was the speaker that had us put all the little short form video clips together?
Haley. That was
Haley,
Haley.
that was killer. And your
Yeah.
video came out great.
Thanks.
And
I did a
Marty's
few.
video came out great. I'm not sure
Yeah.
I saw anybody else actually publish theirs, distribute theirs, but those were both really, really cool. So yeah, thank you to everybody who participated. And now you're ready for Mile High Mastermind.
Let me go on my honeymoon.
All right, Jen's going to take a brief hiatus and go on her honeymoon. And then we're going to do the 8th annual Mile High Mastermind.
Wow.
I think it's the 8th.
I think it's the 8th.
I'm pretty sure it's the 8th.
It's always the last weekend in September for those of you. That one strictly really focuses on mortgage originators and real estate agents. Obviously, Social Media Day was for anybody who has a business that uses social media. Essentially, is your business on Google? Social Media Day was probably a good place for you to be, right? That kind of shit.
Yeah.
This one, we really drill it down for mortgage originators and real estate agents. But for those of you that are interested, either coming back, I know Steven has been there probably more than once at this point.
Yes,
But
yes.
it's always the last weekend in September. It is at the University of Denver. Thank you. Big thank you to DU and all of the things that they do for us circumnavigating that event. And I'm sure Jen will have some propaganda and let us know when tickets go on sale for that event here post honeymoon.
Right. I'm going to Mexico.
Go to Mexico.
Yeah. But
Okay.
if you want to find out about anything about Just the Tips, you can head over to justthetipscoaching.com. You can find copies of Adam's books. You can book one-on coaching with Adam, all the things. And before long, there'll be information about Mile High Mastermind up there. So justthetipscoaching.com for all of that.
And Steven will give you a little bit in the way of Spanish lessons before you go to Mexico.
Perfect. I'm
Sí.
just going to call Steven when I need anything and hold up my phone.
Perfect. El burro sabe más español que tú.
Yes. Mucho más.
See? I told you. And you can tell by the look on her face that I'm right. All right. Well, Steven, from the bottom of my heart, I know it's earlier in the morning there than here. Thank you for carving out the kind of time that it takes to do this, especially while you're on the road.
Yes,
and you were
absolutely.
probably up late too. So thank you for doing it. And for the rest of you, thanks for tuning in, watching or listening live or in syndication. You can catch new, fresh, live episodes of How I Met Your Mortgage on Mondays at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. And 48 hours later, they go up. I'm sorry, you can do that on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Sorry, Jen. And then 48 hours later, you can catch the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, and Apple. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, guys.